Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel, Callie Teaches Stuff. And this week, we're going to review our encyclopedia expectations. We're going to work on our letters for entries W, X, Y, and Z. And then we're going to go over just a few reminders after that. So expectations, first of all, make sure that in your entries you have a minimum of 5 sentences per entry with lots of description and lots of details along the way to make your writing pop. When you're finished with your entry, make sure that you're reading your work out loud. Do you have run-on sentences? And you'll know if you have run-on sentences if you're reading correctly, right? You're only going to stop when there's a period or pause if there's a comma. So if you have 3 lines and typed and you don't have any punctuation in there, that's probably a run-on sentence and it probably needs your attention. So make sure to fix those. And finally, check for the pronoun I and make sure that it's in capital letters when on all of your entries. All right, let's move on. So we have letter W ideas. And again, these are just suggestions that you can use. So wishes, worries, weather, winter, waiting, waves, wonderful. Why did I? Maybe there's something you did. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? When? Maybe when you're older or when the COVID ends, right? Or you could also write an entry about where you're from and talk about, um, you know, if you've moved in this area where you were ahead of time. You could talk about your family history, where your grandparents from, where your parents came from. That's just another idea. All right, so let's look at an example of a letter W entry. This is called wishes. Wishes are just about as tricky as love. You may get what you wish for only to find out that you really didn't want what you wished for in the first place. Or you might get exactly what you wished for, and it is everything you hoped that it would be. I've made many wishes over my life. Some have come true and some haven't. I found that if you really want something, you should work towards it and not wish for it without the work. I always wished for kids. I got them, plenty of them. Now, not my own biological ones, but ones I certainly worked for through my teaching degree. So sometimes wishes don't work out exactly as you thought, but it doesn't mean that they didn't work out at all. So that's W for wishes. All right, for the letter X, guys, this is a required entry that you write about extraordinary me, meaning you. So this is a required entry. You need to make a list of everything about you that is unique and special. So just think about the gifts and the talents that you possess. And then you're going to take all those ideas, right? And you're going to organize them into a paragraph or 2. Make sure that you're using your transition words in your writing. You know, one thing that makes me extraordinary is, another one is, right? Next, finally. And we'll go over some examples of those in just a second. Our extraordinary students. So this is to our 6th grade students at Pine Hollow Elementary from your teachers. All right, when your teachers assigned you this required topic, our goal was to really have you take a moment to think about why you're special and the talents that you possess. Every single one of you has something that makes you unique and wonderful. And every single one of you has gifts. But in middle school and in life, sometimes it's hard to find the good stuff you have going for you when everything else seems like it might be falling apart. So remember to think about what makes you, well, you, okay? And know that it is exactly for those reasons that you are special. You are wonderful, and most importantly, you are loved. And that's the truth. All right, so this is an example, and this was actually my example from my book, and then I'll share a student example that that student did from their book. So it's weird writing about an entry why I'm extraordinary. If my mom were still alive, I'm sure she could have helped me figure all this out. Here goes. I have my mom's kind heart and willingness to help just about anyone. I practice random acts of kindness, something I learned from her, but also a trait that she never pointed out to me. She never called them that. I was just a quiet observer in her kindnesses. My my ability to write poetry is also a gift and another thing that makes me special. I can put words together in ways that other writers might not have ever tried. Finally, what makes me extraordinary is that I stand up for what is right. I'm not just the silent witness. I'm kind of the jump in and take charge kind of person without thinking about the consequences. I believe the jump in and take charge part of me is from my dad. So thanks, Pops. All right, now this is an example that a seventh grade student wrote a couple years ago when she was doing this project. And she had shared this with me, so that's why I still had that one. So anyway, here it goes. This was her seventh grade example. Why am I extraordinary? Well, I haven't really ever thought about that, but now I am. The first thing that makes me extraordinary is that I'm a huge hothead. Thanks, Mommy. My mother has always taught me to stand strong. By this, I mean I'm always quick to stand up to a bully. The next thing that makes me extraordinary is that I have great fashion sense, just like my aunt. I've always liked anything that has to do with shoes, clothes, glitter, and makeup. I've always been good with picking out clothes and make my features stand out. Makeup is another one of my special talents too. Although my mother buys the makeup for me, have always been better at putting it on than her. Sorry. I have also have that mothering streak in me. Although I don't want any kids, I'm very good with them. The last thing that makes me special is that I have never been afraid to be myself. I get teased all the time, but that never stops me from wearing Minnie Mouse ears to school or wearing makeup because it makes me happy. Whatever happens in 10 years, these are things that will always make me special. All right, so let's move on to letter Y, not I. So for letter Y, we have yucky things, yucky stuff, yearning, yesterday, yikes. Maybe you did something, yikes. Maybe you saw something crazy. Maybe you got really scared. Yellow, year, like sixth grade year. You could talk about that and all the changes that we've had in this epic year. Yelling, yoga, Yeti. If you don't know what a Yeti is, he's a Sasquatch or Bigfoot legend. Yogurt, yawns, yellow school bus. And again, guys, these are just suggestions. You can come up with any of your ideas and be just as creative as you want to be. For my letter Y, I actually wrote about the Yukon because I did get to go to Alaska many years ago, and that was a trip on my bucket list. And so that's what I wrote about for letter Y. And so here's my entry for letter Y. Alaska is called the Yukon. Visiting Alaska on a cruise ship was on my bucket list. It has since been marked off. It was one of the most amazing vacations that I've ever been on in my life. We saw whales and bald eagles from the ship, a mom and her seal pups lazing on a rock near where we kayaked and picnicked for lunch, and glaciers calving in the water. The scariest part was the helicopter ride on two different glaciers. When the chopper landed, we skidded several feet across the ice. When it stopped slipping, we were able to get out and walk around and take some amazing pictures. When we left the glacier, we flew so close to the mountains that I literally thought we would crash. As much as I loved this adventure, I was happy when we were back at the airfield. All right, so let's look at this for just a minute. So I not only talked about the trip, right? I used lots of details. I talked about the things that I saw, right? Three different things that we saw: the bald eagles, the whales, the mother and her seals. I went kayaking. I had a picnic lunch. I went on a helicopter ride. I landed on glaciers, lots of details. And then I put my feelings in, right, about that when the helicopter skidded on the glacier. So when I talk about putting details in your writing, these are the things that I mean, making sure that the reader gets a glimpse into what was really cool about that vacation or what made it really special. And that way, when you go back and share these entries years later, you're going to have all those details to come back to. All right, so that's for the letter Y. All right, letter Z. Now, guys, this is where you're really going to have to think outside the box because you might be thinking, oh my gosh, what do I have for letter Z? Well, be creative, okay? Be totally creative. So some things that you could do for fun, you could write Z end and you could talk about this project. You could talk about the end of sixth grade. You could say Z end of sixth grade. Zen, right, which is balancing. Balancing the good and the bad and having those good feelings. Zebras, the best for last. Maybe you had an entry that you really wanted to write about, but it didn't happen and now you've thought about it, so you could put it there. So it could kind of be any letter that you wanted if it's the best for last. Zoos, zombies, zany or zaniest, zippers, zones, zero, the zombie apocalypse, right? Or you could have the best games, the best friends, the best vacay, the best teachers, pets, anything that you could think about. So be creative on that letter Z. Think about anything you can and have fun with it. So when I was thinking about my letter Z, I really, really like zebras. So I actually wrote a poem for my letter Z entry on zebras. And one thing you might not have known is that years ago, back in the late 50s, prisoners would wear black and white striped uniforms, and that was kind of the uniform that they used. Since then, the color has changed, but I still remember in old movies, seeing the prisoners when they were breaking out wearing the black and white stripes. So I wrote about that. And how in my head, when I was thinking about those colors on a prison uniform, don't really go with the beauty of the zebra when we think about a zebra. And so I kind of put those two ideas together in a poem. So here's zebras. Stripes of white and black, perfect opposites on the color wheel, a balance of beauty and strength. Ironic that many years ago, criminals' uniforms could be made from such lovely combinations of your colors and patterns. All right. Did you notice it didn't rhyme, right? And the other thing I want you to notice is the line breaks. So remember when you're writing a poem, a line break is where you want an idea to be on a line by itself, and then you want to add another idea. So if you think about look at the third line, right? A balance of beauty and strength. I wanted that to be on its own, the beauty and the strength in a line together. And then ironic that many years ago, right? Then you're thinking years ago, and then in the next line, you're going to figure out what happens. Criminals' uniforms could be made what? From such lovely combinations, line break, of your colors and patterns. So when you're writing your poetry, think about the ideas that you want your reader to have at the end of each line and what comes next and suspense and things like that. All right, so that's an example for letter Z. You'd be more than welcome to write a zebra poem on your own or some other poem for something for the letter Z. All right, so as we finish up, just a few reminders. Number one, make sure that as you're looking at your list, if you're going to choose something for a list, that you don't already have 5 lists somewhere in this project already. Number two, fix any underlined blue or red marks on your entries, right? Remember that you can right-click on that and it will give you a suggestion, so you can fix it right there. Number 3, don't forget to submit your work through Google Classroom. Some students are actually writing their entries, but then they're not clicking that submit button. So make sure that you do that so that we can score your work. And number 4, for next week, we are finishing our project. So next week, we're going to be doing the actual cover of the book. So we need to think about titles for that. You're going to dedicate your book to somebody. So think about who you might want to dedicate your book to. And then you're going to write all about the author entry. And that's going to be like the jacket biography on the back of the book that you see, where it talks about you and the author. And then we will be finished with our project next week. How cool is that? You've written a whole book. All right. And most important of all, right? complete your work or a unicorn will die. And you do not want that to happen. Let's look and see what he's going to do now. Oh no. Oh no. Here we go. Here we go. Do your work. Do your work. Do your work. Oh gosh, guys, do your work. Don't be killing off those wonderful unicorns. Well, we'll see you next week. Take care and do your work so our unicorn does not die. And that's it.